Ancient travelers crossed impossible distances with secrets we have nearly forgotten. The Silk Road was more than a trade route. It was a proving ground for human ingenuity. People moved through scorching deserts and over treacherous mountain passes, relying on a hidden body of knowledge to stay alive. This was a world where a specific whistle could save a caravan, and the pattern of stars held the key to finding water. By the end of our journey, you will understand the sophisticated survival system that connected continents. How did merchants hide fortunes in plain sight? And what secret language ensured their safe passage? What does it take to thrive when everything is unfamiliar? Survival on the Silk Road depended on more than just strength. It relied on a secret language of signals. In the deep silence of a mountain pass, a single, sharp whistle could echo for miles. This was not a random noise, it was a precise instruction. A two-tone whistle might warn of rockfall ahead, while a rapid series of short bursts could signal the location of a fresh spring. These sounds carried information across distances where a shouted voice would be lost to the wind, but the communication did not end with whistles. In the bustling, multilingual chaos of a caravanserai at night, another system took over. Drummers used complex rhythms on their frame drums, patterns that were as clear as written words to those who understood them. A steady, slow beat might announce the arrival of a trade official, while a frantic, staccato pattern could spread news of a sandstorm approaching from the west. This was a network of sound, a way to share vital news instantly across a sea of strangers. The most discreet conversations, however, happened in plain sight. In crowded marketplaces where spies and competitors listened to every offer, merchants developed a hidden language of gestures. A subtle touch to the earlobe could mean the price was too high. Fingers brushed lightly against a sleeve could indicate a counteroffer. An entire negotiation for a fortune in spices or silk could be completed with a series of silent hand signals, a secret dance that ensured a good deal remained a private matter. This unspoken code was a shield against greed and deception. Mastering these signals meant the difference between profit and peril. How did travelers know which signs to trust in a land of strangers? The answer lies in a system of symbols far more permanent than a whistle or a gesture, a code etched into the very landscape they crossed. These silent gestures and coded sounds were useless if you were lost. Without a single map or compass, travelers had to become living instruments of navigation. Their compass was the night sky, but not the sky just anyone could see. They followed star patterns unique to the Silk Road's latitudes, constellations that hung low on the horizon and pointed the way like celestial signposts. One star might line up with a distant, solitary mountain peak, creating a perfect alignment to follow for 3 nights of marching. Another constellation's rotation would signal the precise time to turn south toward the next oasis. This was not casual stargazing. It was a rigorous science memorized through generations, a map drawn in light against the dark desert canopy. By day, the desert itself provided its own directions. The relentless wind did not just bring storms, it sculpted the sand into readable forms. Experienced guides could look at the shape of a dune and know the prevailing wind direction for that season. A dune with a long, gentle slope and a sharp, steep face indicated the wind was blowing from the gentle side, carving out the sharp drop. This told you which way was east or west as clearly as a road sign. Following the wind, swept patterns was like reading a giant, earthen arrow laid across the landscape. And then there were the living maps, the paths written in the sky by wings. Seasonal bird migrations were a crucial guide. The sight of a specific type of crane flying in a determined V-shape toward the southeast in autumn meant that water and greenery lay in that direction. Flocks of small songbirds moving at dusk often flew directly toward the nearest hidden spring, their path a secret route to survival. These travelers understood that the natural world was constantly communicating, offering directions to those who knew how to listen. The stars, the sands, and the birds formed a triple guidebook. But what happened when the path led not to an open desert, but to a fortified city gate, manned by suspicious guards? How did a stranger gain entry into a world that did not trust outsiders? A traveler standing at the edge of the Taklamakan Desert faced a choice whispered to be a death sentence. They called this place the Sea of Death, a vast ocean of shifting sand where the rules of survival were rewritten. The first and most vital secret was finding water, a treasure hidden beneath the surface. Experienced guides did not dig at random. They read the land like a book. A certain type of reed, growing in a deceptively dry-looking patch, sent its roots straight down, sometimes for many meters, to tap into a buried water table. The presence of tamarisk shrubs in a specific formation often indicated a shallow underground stream. Finding these plants was like discovering a secret map where X marked the spot, and a carefully dug hole would often reward the weary with life-giving water. The sun itself was another brutal enemy. Daytime temperatures could bake the very air, making travel a suicidal endeavor, so the caravans moved by night. This was not a simple preference, it was a calculated survival tactic. The cool darkness conserved their strength and, just as crucially, their water. They navigated by the same stars that guided them elsewhere, but here in the deep desert, the constellations took on a new urgency, their clear, bright light the only beacon in an otherwise featureless void. The silence of the night march was profound, broken only by the soft crunch of feet on cool sand and the occasional snort of a camel. And when thirst became a constant companion, they had one more trick. They carried with them a specific, gnarly root, known to the local peoples for generations. This was not food. Chewing on this tough fiber did not quench thirst in the way drinking water did. Instead, it stimulated saliva production, keeping their mouths from becoming completely dry and parched. It was a psychological and physiological trick, a way to stave off the desperate feeling of dehydration and maintain a sense of control over their bodies in an environment designed to break them. Through plants, stars, and a simple route, they conquered a sea of sand, but survival was only the first challenge. Once they reached the legendary cities at the desert's edge, they faced a new test, a maze of human nature where trust was a currency more valuable than gold. A fortune in silk and gems was a dangerous beacon in the wilderness, attracting the wrong kind of attention. To move unseen, travelers mastered the art of becoming ordinary. A pilgrim's simple wooden staff, worn smooth from miles of travel, might have been carefully hollowed out. Inside, a merchant could nestle a handful of raw sapphires or tightly rolled sheets of gold, transforming a humble walking aid into a disguised treasure chest. No bandit would think to break a common traveler's stick over his knee. Clothing, too, was engineered for secrecy. A thick leather belt might contain a hidden inner pocket, stitched seamlessly between layers, perfect for carrying rare spices or unminted silver. The voluminous sleeves of a scholar's robe could conceal a labyrinth of small, carefully sewn compartments, each holding a single precious pearl or a folded letter of credit from a distant king. The goal was never just to hide an object, but to erase its very presence from the minds of those who might look. The most effective disguise, however, was not for their goods, but for themselves. A merchant from Venice, with his pale skin and strange features, would stand out terribly in a Kashgar bazaar, making him an instant target. To solve this, the wisest travelers learned to blend in. They would trade their foreign tunics for the local style of coat, dye their hair with walnut shells to a darker shade, and even adopt the subtle mannerisms and gestures of the region. By walking, talking, and dressing like a local, they shed the mark of the outsider. They became just another face in the crowd, their true wealth and origin hidden behind a performance of belonging. This was the ultimate camouflage, not of objects, but of identity itself. Yet, even with hidden treasures and a perfect disguise, a traveler was still vulnerable in the open. Their final defense was not to hide, but to move with the strength and secrecy of a shadow, becoming part of a larger, organized system that moved like clockwork through the most dangerous lands. While a merchant's belt might hide gems, the most valuable cargo was often knowledge itself. Beyond the shimmering silk and pungent spices lay a secret trade in ideas and living wonders. Sophisticated brass astrolabes, carefully packed in padded wooden boxes, journeyed from Baghdad to Chang'an. These intricate devices were more than just beautiful metalwork. They were portable computers of the ancient world, capable of mapping the stars, telling time and calculating distances. A single astrolabe in the right hands could guide a caravan across trackless wastes with a precision that seemed like magic, making it a treasure sought by kings and master navigators alike. Its value is not in the brass, but in the celestial knowledge etched into its delicate plates. Alongside these instruments traveled another kind of coded knowledge, medicinal formulas written not in plain language, but in complex ciphers. A scroll describing a remedy for fever might list ingredients using code names, like calling for dragon's tooth instead of a specific root. This was not just to protect a healer's business, it was a necessity. In a world where a powerful recipe could be worth a fortune, writing it in code prevented spies or rivals from easily stealing the secret during the long, vulnerable journey. Only the intended recipient, who held the key to the cipher, could unlock the scroll's true healing power. But not all precious cargo was inanimate. The most challenging shipments were the live ones, exotic animals destined for royal menageries. Imagine the logistical nightmare of transporting a young giraffe from the coasts of Africa, across the Indian Ocean by ship, and then overland through mountains and deserts to the court of a Chinese emperor. These creatures required specialized handlers who knew how to keep them calm, fed, and healthy on a journey lasting many months. Their safe arrival was a spectacle that demonstrated a ruler's reach and power, a living testament to the vast, interconnected world the Silk Road created. Perhaps the most closely guarded secrets of all were not objects, but instructions. A small, unassuming pouch might contain seeds from a rare tulip species, but its true worth was the scroll accompanying it, detailing the exact soil conditions, watering schedule, and protection from frost required to make the flower bloom in a foreign land. The seeds were almost worthless without the secret of how to make them grow. This transfer of living knowledge from one climate to another quietly changed landscapes, diets, and cultures forever. The real currency of this vast network was not just what you could carry, but what you could make grow, heal, or calculate once you arrived. The map a merchant carried was often his most valuable and dangerous possession. To an untrained eye, it was a beautiful but confusing artifact, illustrated with mythical beasts and strange winding paths. But for the initiated, every line and symbol held a hidden truth. Cartographers deliberately wove deception into their work. A river might be drawn flowing in the wrong direction, or a mountain range could be placed many miles from its true location. These were not mistakes, they were security measures. A rival or a bandit who stole such a map would be led astray, into a waterless waste or a dead-end canyon, while the true path remained a secret shared only between the mapmaker and his trusted client. The real route was not shown with a simple line, but with a code of symbols. A drawing of a specific type of hawk perched on a rock did not merely represent wildlife, it indicated a safe pass through a treacherous ridge. A cluster of 3 particular flowers on the parchment might signal the location of a hidden spring, its water sweet and clean, just beyond the next dune. These landmarks were chosen because they were permanent and recognizable only to those who had been taught what to look for. The most crucial information was often encoded in the most innocent-looking details. The number of leaves on a tree in the margin could correspond to the number of days traveled between 2 oases. The color of a camel's saddlecloth in an illustration might warn of a specific local tribe's current temperament, from peaceful to hostile. Reading the map was an act of translation, turning a work of art into a set of survival instructions. This was knowledge that could not be bought, only earned through trust and experience. So how did a traveler, armed with this coded guide, actually approach a strange and powerful city? And what secret rituals of introduction allowed them to pass safely through its gates? A caravanserai was far more than a simple roadside inn. These sprawling, fortified complexes, spaced a day's travel apart, were the beating hearts of the Silk Road's secret nervous system. Within their high walls, the true business of the journey unfolded under the cloak of hospitality. The most urgent trade was not in silk, but in information. In the flickering torchlight of the central courtyard, a merchant from the west, his clothes still dusty from the Taklamakan, would quietly share the location of a new bandit ambush point with a trader from the east preparing to depart. This was a life and death exchange, a verbal map of dangers that updated itself with every arriving caravan. The caravanserai master, a figure of immense local influence, acted as a central clearinghouse for this intelligence, knowing that the safety of all travelers and the continued prosperity of his own establishment depended on this free flow of warnings. Beyond whispers in the dark, these way stations served as covert banking centers. A merchant who had grown weary of the journey, or who feared an upcoming mountain pass, could deposit his most valuable goods with the caravanserai master for a hefty fee. His fine Chinese porcelain or bundles of saffron would be hidden not in a simple chest, but within a false wall in the storeroom or beneath a loose stone in the stables. In exchange, he received a small, seemingly innocuous token, a carved piece of bone, a specific type of knotted cord. This token was a key. He could send it ahead with a trusted messenger to a business partner in the next major city. That partner could then present the token at a connected caravanserai and retrieve the goods, completing the transaction without the original merchant ever having to risk the final, most dangerous leg of the journey. The very architecture of the caravanserai was a medium for secret communication. A specific crack in the foundation near the main gate, or a particular wooden beam in the guest quarters, might serve as a dead drop. A caravan leader, before leaving at dawn, could slip a tiny, tightly rolled parchment into a hidden crevice. Days or even weeks later, another traveler who knew to look in that exact spot would retrieve the message. These notes were not sealed with wax and emblems, which would only attract attention. Instead, they were coded with simple, pre-arranged symbols, a small drawing of a fish, or 3 dots of ink, that identified the intended recipient and ensured the message would be ignored or destroyed if it fell into the wrong hands. In this way, the caravanserai became a slow-motion relay system, passing instructions, market prices, and personal news across the continent, one hidden nook at a time. This network of safety and secrets enabled the physical movement of people and goods, but it was all built upon a foundation of trust. How could a complete stranger arriving from 1,000 miles away possibly prove they were worthy of that trust? A caravan's survival depended on a simple, brutal fact: food could not spoil. The desert sun, an enemy by day, became a vital ally in this silent battle against rot. Travelers did not simply dry their meat and fruit, they perfected it. In the scorching heart of the Taklamakan, they used the sand itself as a giant oven. Thin strips of mutton or goat would be laid directly on the hot, fine-grained dunes at noon. The sand, heated to a blistering temperature, would quickly sear the outside of the meat, sealing in its scant moisture while the dry, sterile air pulled the rest of the water out from within. Within hours, they had a lightweight, rock-hard slab of protein that could last for months, immune to insects and decay, a concentrated packet of energy for the long march ahead. But some foods, especially grains and breads, were vulnerable to mold and pests. This is where secret herbal mixtures came into play, recipes passed from one caravan master to the next. It was not enough to know which plants repelled insects. The real secret was in the combination. A traveler might grind together dried lavender, a specific type of mint that grew only in high mountain valleys, and the powdered bark of a desert shrub. This aromatic dust would then be carefully mixed into their flour before it was baked into hardtack or stuffed into the seams of their grain sacks. The scent was pleasant to humans, but it created an invisible barrier that confused and repelled weevils, moths, and rodents. This was preventative magic, a way to ensure that the food supply you started with would be the one you finished with, untouched by invisible invaders. Perhaps the most ingenious preservation technique, however, was one that created food from within a controlled decay. The secret of fermenting liquids in animal skins turned a potential disaster into a nourishing triumph. A goat skin, carefully prepared and sealed with fat, was not just a canteen. A traveler would fill it with mare's milk, perhaps mixed with a handful of grains. As the skin bounced against the side of a camel for days in the heat, the natural bacteria already present in the leather would begin to work, fermenting the liquid inside. The result was a tangy, slightly alcoholic, and highly nourishing drink, packed with probiotics that protected the gut from unfamiliar local water and diseases. This was not merely a beverage, it was a portable meal and a medical kit rolled into one, a self-replenishing food source that grew more potent the longer the journey lasted. How did they know when the fermentation was perfect and not dangerous? The answer was a sensory language, a knowledge of smell and taste so refined it could judge the safety of a meal by instinct alone. This deep intuitive understanding of their own bodies and the world around them was the final, and most personal, secret they carried. A scorpion's sting in the deep desert meant a slow, painful death, unless you knew which plant to crush. Travelers carried entire pharmacies in their memories, a cross-cultural first aid kit refined through shared suffering. For that scorpion sting, the secret was a small, spiky plant that seemed to hold no life at all. You would dig it up, crush its bitter root into a paste with a few drops of precious water, and pack it directly onto the wound. The pain would begin to recede within minutes, the swelling slowly calming. This knowledge did not belong to one people. It was a universal remedy passed from Mongol herders to Persian merchants, a testament to the Silk Road's role as a conduit for healing. High in the mountain passes, another invisible enemy waited, thin air that could bring on pounding headaches, crippling nausea, and a fatal swelling in the lungs. The preventative for this altitude sickness was not a single herb, but a complex formula, a tea brewed from 3 specific ingredients. One was a type of dried leaf that increased circulation, another a tart berry rich in a natural compound that helped the body use oxygen more efficiently, and the third was always a local root known only to the mountain tribes themselves. Drinking this bitter tea each morning before a climb was not a guarantee, but it shifted the odds dramatically in your favor, a daily ritual that fortified the body against the sky's own poison. But the most widespread medical wisdom was also the simplest, and it revolved around a surprising obsession with cleanliness. In an age when many in crowded European cities believed bathing was dangerous, Silk Road travelers practiced a meticulous form of hygiene born of pure necessity. At every caravanserai, the first task after tending to the animals was to wash not just hands and face, but feet and hair, using strong soap made from animal fats and ash. This was not about comfort, it was a calculated defense against the filth fever and plagues that could wipe out a caravan in days. They understood long before germ theory that sickness clung to grime. This shared commitment to basic sanitation created a kind of invisible shield, slowing the spread of diseases across continents by interrupting their journey on human bodies. The real medical secret was this holistic view, treating the body as a system to be maintained with plants, formulas, and rituals. This knowledge was their true wealth, a living inheritance more valuable than any gem. But how did they protect this priceless asset and pass it on to the next generation of travelers without it being lost or stolen along the way? The most valuable cargo on the Silk Road weighed nothing at all. While camels strained under bundles of silk and spices, the true wealth flowed silently between trusted contacts, a trade in secrets that could make or break empires. This hidden economy dealt in whispers, in seemingly innocent letters, and in the movements of men who appeared to be nothing more than humble pilgrims or merchants. A single piece of political intelligence, carried from one end of the continent to the other, could be worth more than an entire caravan of frankincense. The impending death of a distant emperor, a secret treaty between 2 powers, or the discovery of a new silver mine. This was the information that changed the balance of the world, and it moved through the same channels as everyday goods. Carrying such dangerous knowledge required extreme discretion. Sensitive political reports were never written on fine parchment. Instead, they were inscribed in tiny, precise script on the thinnest possible paper, which was then rolled into a tight cylinder and sealed inside a hollow candle. As the candle was carried and used, it would slowly burn down, destroying the evidence with it. If the messenger was searched, guards would find only a common household item. For even more urgent messages, another method involved the wax seals themselves. The seemingly decorative impression on a sealed letter might actually be a coded map. The number of leaves on a stamped flower, or the specific direction a bird was facing, could convey the size and location of an approaching army, all hidden in plain sight on the outside of an otherwise innocent personal letter. These messages were carried by a shadow network of informants who were masters of blending in. They were not spies in the dramatic sense, but often merchants, monks, or even musicians whose travels provided perfect cover. A lute player moving from court to court was a common sight, and no one would suspect the intricate inlay on his instrument contained tiny compartments for carrying coated pellets of wax. A Nestorian Christian monk, traveling on a pilgrimage, could pass through hostile territories unchallenged, his religious robes hiding folded reports on the economic health of the regions he crossed. These individuals were the living fibers of a continental nervous system, sensing shifts in power and reporting them back to those who paid for the knowledge. The most sophisticated information, however, was economic forecasts. A merchant guild in Venice needed to know not just the price of silk in Samarkand, but whether a poor harvest in Persia would drive up the cost of dyes 6 months from now. This information was encoded in commercial letters using a language of metaphor and family news. A phrase like "our cousin is expecting a child in the spring" might secretly mean that a new supply of lapis lazuli would be available from the east when the mountain passes thawed. A warning that the winter has been harsh on the northern flocks was a clear signal that wool prices were about to skyrocket. To an outsider, it was a friendly update. To an initiated trader, it was a detailed market analysis that dictated where to send his entire fortune next. This constant, clandestine flow of knowledge turned the Silk Road into more than a trade route. It was the world's first live information network, where the right word at the right time was the ultimate currency. But how did these travelers, burdened with so many secrets, find the mental fortitude to endure years away from home? And what inner tools did they use to protect their own minds from the strain of such a life? A caravan's strength was measured not in the weight of its silks, but in the health of its camels. These animals were living engines of the Silk Road, and their well-being was a matter of life and death, protected by a deep and secretive body of knowledge. The first sign of trouble was never a loud bellow or a collapse. It was a subtle shift in behavior only a trained eye could catch. A master handler would watch his camel's ears with the focus of a physician taking a pulse. If one ear drooped slightly lower than the other, and the camel repeatedly turned its head to one side, it was not a casual gesture. This was a silent alarm bell, an early indication of a brewing inner ear infection that, left untreated, could lead to a devastating loss of balance on a narrow mountain trail. Another secret sign was in the way a camel chewed its cud. A healthy, rhythmic motion meant all was well, but a hesitant, uneven chew, with occasional pauses where the animal seemed to swallow with difficulty, signaled a problem in its first stomach, a digestive issue that could quickly drain its legendary stamina. Spotting these tiny warnings days before a full illness struck was the difference between a simple treatment on the trail and a catastrophic loss. Maintaining that stamina required more than just feeding. It demanded a secret science of nutrition. Camels were not simply turned loose to graze on whatever scrub they could find. Handlers carried small, precious bags of specific mineral salts and dried seaweeds, traded from great distances. A pinch of this potent mixture was added to their feed at crucial stages of the journey, especially before a long, waterless desert crossing. This was not food, it was metabolic fuel, a way to preemptively balance the electrolytes their bodies would desperately lose. They also knew that a camel's hump was not a water tank, but a fat reserve. To keep that hump full and energy-rich, they had a special recipe for a high-energy cake, made from crushed dates, barley, and a particular type of rendered animal fat. These dense, brick-like cakes were reserved for the most grueling segments of the trip, a burst of concentrated calories that could power a camel for days on little else. This was strategic fueling, a dietary plan mapped out as carefully as the route itself, but the most intimate secret was the language between handler and animal. In the chaos of a crowded caravanserai or the tense silence of bandit country, shouting commands was unthinkable. Instead, they used a system of silent pressure. A handler guided his lead camel not with reins, but with the slightest touch of a long, slender stick. A tap on the left foreleg meant kneel. A gentle press against the right side of the neck meant turn left. The camels themselves were trained to recognize the unique scent of their master, often from a piece of cloth the handler kept on his person that carried a specific smell. In a sandstorm where sight and sound were useless, a camel would follow that familiar scent to safety. This was a partnership built on quiet understanding, a dialogue of touch and trust that made the colossal beast and the human a single, coordinated unit. The true treasure these travelers guarded was not in their saddlebags, but in this profound, unspoken bond with the creatures that made their world possible. And when the journey finally ended, and the gates of a legendary city swung open, what secret ceremonies of arrival awaited them? A traveler's survival often hinged on a skill more nuanced than any map or code, the ability to transform their own identity to match the world around them. This was not mere imitation, but a deep cultural code switching, a performance of belonging so flawless it could open doors sealed to outsiders. The first test of this mastery came not with words, but with the body itself. Every region held its own secret language of respect, a silent script written in gesture and posture. In one kingdom, accepting a cup of tea with your left hand was a profound insult, while in the neighboring valley, it was expected. A traveler learned to observe these subtleties before ever speaking, watching how local elders greeted one another, noting the precise angle of a bow or the specific way hands were held during an introduction. One of the most closely guarded secrets was the greeting ritual for a desert chieftain. You never approached him directly. Instead, you were expected to sit quietly at a respectful distance for a count of 100 heartbeats, demonstrating patience and humility before you were even acknowledged. To rush forward was to brand yourself as a greedy and untrustworthy stranger. These silent rules were the true keys to the city gates. The art of gift-giving was another minefield, governed by hidden protocols that could make an ally or an enemy. The value of the object was often less important than the story and symbolism behind it. Presenting a fine, sharp dagger to a mountain chieftain was not a gesture of aggression, but a recognition of his strength and a symbolic offer of alliance. However, the same dagger given to a silk merchant in a bustling city could be misinterpreted as a threat. The most successful gifts were those that showed deep cultural awareness. A merchant might carry bundles of high-quality writing paper, not for his own use, but as gifts for scholars and officials in regions where paper was a rare luxury. The gift was not the paper itself, but the unspoken message it carried: I respect your learning and your position. The timing of the gift was also a coded message. A present offered immediately upon meeting could be seen as a bribe, but a gift given after 3 days of conversation, framed as a token of gratitude for the host's wisdom, was seen as a gesture of genuine respect, sealing a bond of trust. And then there was the challenge of language, a barrier that could isolate a traveler completely. They did not have years to master new tongues, so they developed linguistic tricks for rapid survival. The smartest travelers focused on learning only 3 categories of phrases with perfect pronunciation. First were the phrases of gratitude and politeness, which could disarm suspicion and build immediate rapport. Second were the numbers for basic bargaining, because mispronouncing a number during a negotiation could be catastrophic. And third were the specific names for the local foods their bodies could tolerate without illness. They learned not through grammar books, but through music and rhythm, turning essential phrases into simple, memorable songs they could hum to themselves as they walked. They also mastered the use of a neutral, accentless tone when speaking, avoiding the hard consonants and fast pace of their native language to make their limited vocabulary more easily understood. This was not about fluency, but about building a bridge, however narrow, that allowed trust to cross. The ultimate goal of all this adaptation was to become a ghost in the culture, someone who moved through it without friction, leaving no wake of offense or suspicion behind. How did they know which customs to adopt and which to avoid? The answer lies in the most unexpected of places: the shared stories and songs whispered around caravanserai fires after dark. The sky was their final, most urgent map. A sudden storm in a high mountain pass could sweep an entire caravan off a narrow ledge, while a mist rain in the desert could mean death by thirst. To survive, Silk Road travelers learned to read the atmosphere with a precision that rivaled any modern forecast. Their first clues came from the clouds, but not just any clouds. They knew that certain formations were unique to specific valleys and peaks. A thin, wispy cloud, like a horse's tail, gathering at the crest of a particular mountain range was not a passing fancy. It was a sure sign that within 6 hours, fierce winds would come funneling down the opposite side of the pass. They called these warning wisps the old man's beard, and seeing one meant securing every loose item and finding shelter before the gales arrived. Another formation, a low, flat, dark gray cloud that clung to the slopes like a blanket, signaled something entirely different. This was the rain bringer, but it came with a hidden danger. If that cloud began to develop a faint, greenish tinge deep within its core, it was no longer just a bringer of rain. That subtle green hue was a secret signal for devastating hailstones, stones large enough to injure animals and shatter precious cargo. Spotting that color shift gave a caravan just enough time to drape their camels in thick felt blankets and huddle under any available overhang. But the sky was not the only source of warning. The natural world was a network of living weather stations. Travelers watched the smallest creatures for the biggest changes. When ants suddenly began carrying their eggs deeper into their nests with frantic speed, it was not just random activity. This was a clear 6-hour warning of a significant drop in atmospheric pressure, signaling a major storm. Even the birds told secrets. Sparrows bathing vigorously in the dust was a well-known sign of approaching dry, hot winds from the south. If a certain songbird, known for its constant chatter, fell completely silent for an entire morning, it meant the air itself had changed, becoming heavy and charged with the promise of a thunderstorm still 2 days away. The most advanced forecast, however, was written on the wind itself. Experienced guides could literally smell a change in the weather long before it arrived. A wind shifting to carry the distinct, moist scent of wet clay from a distant river basin, even in the heart of a dry plain, meant that rains had fallen upstream. This was a vital prediction, because those rains would swell the river, making a planned crossing impossible or even lethal within a day. Conversely, a wind that carried the sharp, clean scent of pine from a far-off mountain range signaled a coming cold front, a warning to unpack the heavy woolens before the temperature plummeted that night. This sensory forecasting, this deep reading of clouds, creatures, and scents, formed a daily ritual of survival. It was a constant, silent conversation with the environment, a way of listening to the land as it whispered its intentions. How did they compile all this fleeting, sensory data into a lasting body of wisdom that could be taught to the next traveler setting out on the road? A traveler walking alone was a target, but a traveler with the right mark on his staff was a protected guest. This was the hidden reality of the Silk Road's secret societies, networks of trust that operated like an invisible guild across continents. Their first rule was anonymity. You never knew the full name of the man who helped you cross a mountain pass, only the sign he carried. Initiation was not a grand ceremony, but a quiet, solemn test of character. A prospective member would be led to a remote caravanserai and given a seemingly impossible task, like delivering a sealed, empty box to a contact in a city 3 weeks away. The box itself was meaningless. The true test was in the journey, how the traveler treated his animals, how he negotiated with locals, whether he opened the box out of curiosity, and if he arrived on time. Passing this test proved your honesty, resilience, and discretion more than any oath ever could. Once accepted, you learned the secret meeting places. These were not always grand buildings. A particular cave behind a waterfall in the Pamir Mountains, known only by a specific scent of wet stone and sage, served as one gathering point. A certain ancient gnarled tree in a Samarkand orchard, its trunk marked with a seemingly natural knot that resembled a coiled serpent, was another. These locations were never written down, only described through oral poetry and song, their directions hidden in the lyrics of traveling minstrels' ballads. To find the next safe house, you had to listen to the right song at the right fireside. The most enduring evidence of this network lies in the stones themselves. Along the most treacherous stretches of the route, you can still find rocks carved with tiny, deliberate symbols. A spiral with 3 dots inside did not mean a traveler was artistic. It was a directional marker indicating a hidden spring lay 300 paces to the north. A carving of a fish with a broken tail warned that the next river crossing was dangerous due to quicksand. These symbols were a permanent, silent language etched into the landscape, a guidebook for those who could read it, and meaningless scratches to everyone else. But the system's true power was its method of vouching. A merchant arriving in a strange city could not simply claim to be trustworthy. Instead, he would present a small, broken piece of carved jade to a local spice merchant. The spice merchant would produce the other half, and if the 2 pieces fit together perfectly, it was proof that a trusted mutual contact hundreds of miles away had vouched for the stranger's character. This token system created a chain of personal responsibility that stretched for thousands of miles, ensuring that a recommendation was not just a word, but a tangible bond. A broken promise in one city would shatter your reputation across the entire network, leaving you isolated and vulnerable on the world's most dangerous roads. This web of trust was the ultimate safeguard, the invisible fortress that made the vast journey possible. The silent stones and secret symbols offered a map for the body, but the travelers carried another kind of compass for the soul. Across the vast emptiness, spiritual survival was as crucial as finding water. They developed deeply personal rituals, portable faiths that fit inside a saddlebag. A merchant might carry a small, beautifully carved wooden box, its exterior worn smooth from travel. To any observer, it was a simple container for seals or spices. But when opened in the privacy of his tent, the inside of the lid revealed a delicate painting of the Virgin Mary, while the base held a tiny, folded prayer rug oriented toward Mecca. This was not a contradiction, but a practical fusion of beliefs, a portable altar designed to invite all possible protection on a journey where no single god held sway. Their meditation practices were not for serene monasteries, but for the back of a moving camel. They mastered a technique of rhythmic breathing synchronized with their mount's gait, a steady inhale and exhale that turned the monotonous plodding into a moving mantra. This was not about achieving deep trance, but about maintaining a center of calm amidst the constant stimulus of strange lands and potential danger. It was a way to distance themselves from the fear, to observe the rising panic of a potential sandstorm or the tension of a narrow mountain pass without being consumed by it. This mental discipline was their anchor. This blending of traditions created a unique, syncretic belief system born from shared hardship. A Zoroastrian from Persia might wear a Christian cross alongside a Zoroastrian Faravahar symbol, not out of confusion, but from a profound understanding that the spirit of a place might respond better to one symbol than another. They collected blessings like currency, seeking out local holy men for amulets and prayers regardless of their specific faith. A Buddhist chant for safe passage might be whispered alongside a Muslim prayer for good fortune, the words mingling into a single plea for mercy from the unforgiving road. The ultimate belief was in the power of protection itself, wherever it could be found. This deeply personal, adaptable faith was the final, invisible layer of their survival kit. It guarded their minds against despair and their hearts against loneliness, offering a thread of connection to the divine in a landscape that often felt utterly abandoned. But how did these solitary spiritual practices, these quiet whispers to the heavens, translate into the thunderous, public celebrations that marked the end of their impossible journeys? The clatter of abacus beads in a Kashgar market was a language in itself. These were not mere counting tools. They were sophisticated negotiation aids with hidden functions known only to seasoned merchants. An abacus could be used to display a number, but a subtle flick of the wrist could also conceal it. A merchant might perform a rapid calculation, arriving at a final price, but then deliberately leave one bead hovering between 2 positions. This ambiguous state was not a mistake. It was a deliberate opening for the other party to make a counter-offer without either side losing face. The physical act of sliding the beads back and forth created a rhythm to the bargaining, a tangible pace that allowed both parties to think, a silent mediation in a process that could easily become heated. For truly sensitive deals, some devices had secret compartments built into their frames. A trader could slide open a tiny, disguised panel to reveal a small sample of a higher quality good, proving his claim of excellence without revealing his entire stock to every onlooker in the busy market. The true heart of a major business deal, however, was not the marketplace, but the quiet of a private chamber centered around a tea ceremony. This was never just about drinking. The entire ritual was a slow, deliberate dance of trust assessment. The quality of the tea offered was the first signal. A host serving a common, bitter brew was setting a tone of casual disinterest or a test of the guest's humility. But the presentation of a rare, aromatic tea leaf, reserved for honored guests, was a clear statement of serious intent. The guest's role was equally coded. Accepting the first cup immediately signaled eagerness and potentially weakness. A wise negotiator would wait, complimenting the aroma and the craftsmanship of the pot, demonstrating patience and a focus on the relationship over the immediate transaction. The pace of pouring and drinking set the rhythm for the entire negotiation. Rushing through the tea meant rushing through the deal, a sign of disrespect. A slow, measured ceremony created a space for rapport to build, transforming a financial discussion into a personal bond. The clink of porcelain was the sound of trust being carefully constructed, sip by sip. When words failed, the body spoke a universal tongue. A merchant leaning back and casually stroking his beard while examining a bolt of silk was not simply thinking. He was broadcasting a message of calculated disinterest, lowering the perceived value of the item. Conversely, a slight, almost imperceptible nod while listening to a price was a powerful signal of agreement. A silent yes that often carried more weight than a verbal one. The most critical non-verbal exchanges happened with hands concealed within the wide sleeves of a robe. Here, a complex language of finger presses evolved. A merchant would take the hand of his counterpart as if in a friendly gesture, and beneath the cloth, use his fingers to tap out numbers on the other man's wrist. 3 firm presses on the inner wrist might mean 300. Followed by 2 light taps on the palm to indicate the unit of currency. This hidden handshake allowed them to argue fiercely in public over a price they had already secretly agreed upon in private, a performance for competitors and spies that protected their true agreement. The final handshake, the one everyone could see, was merely a formality, the public seal on a deal whose true terms had been written in the silent language of trust, tea, and secret calculations. A caravan's true wealth was never carried in the open. Ingenious travelers turned their most basic gear into masterpieces of deception, starting with the camel's saddle itself. A saddle might look like a simple frame of wood and leather, but in the hands of a clever merchant, it became a secret vault. Artisans would carefully hollow out the central pommel, the high front of the saddle, creating a hidden cavity just large enough to hold a dozen raw rubies or a tightly wound scroll of letters of credit. The leather covering would be expertly restitched, leaving no visible seam. Even if a bandit cut the saddle straps in frustration, he would likely discard the bulky, seemingly solid object, never guessing the fortune it contained. This was security through obscurity, hiding treasure in the most mundane place imaginable. Storage chests presented another golden opportunity for concealment. A merchant's strongbox, banded with iron and secured with a heavy lock, was an obvious target. The wise traveler used this to their advantage. They commissioned chests with expertly crafted false bottoms. The top compartment would hold goods of moderate value, like common linens or cheap pottery, satisfying a casual thief's search. But beneath a perfectly fitted, seemingly solid wooden panel lay the true cargo, silk so fine it felt like air, or delicate porcelain cups nestled in raw silk. The weight of the chest felt correct. Its appearance was ordinary, but its secret heart held a king's ransom. This psychological trick relied on the thief's greed and haste. betting they would be content with the first loot they found and move on. Some of the most effective disguises transformed one substance into another. A load of common salt, carried in coarse sacks, was a boring sight. But within those same sacks, buried deep in the center, could be smaller bags of priceless saffron threads or peppercorns. The strong scent of the salt would mask any aromatic spice, and the unappealing nature of the cargo made it uninteresting to steal. Blocks of wax, essential for sealing documents and making candles, could be molded around bundles of unminted gold or silver. To any inspector or thief, it was just a shipment of common household wax. The real value was hidden inside, a metallic core protected by a worthless shell. This method required trust between trading partners, as the recipient had to know to melt the wax down to reveal the precious metal within. Perhaps the most calculated strategy was never putting all your treasure in one place. A single caravan, no matter how well guarded, was a single point of failure. Astute merchants would divide their wealth across multiple caravans traveling the same route, sometimes days or even weeks apart. One caravan might carry 70% of the goods, while two others carried 15% each. If bandits struck the main group, the financial loss was survivable, and the smaller, less conspicuous caravans would likely arrive safely with their portions of the fortune. This was the ancient equivalent of a diversified investment portfolio, a cold-hearted but essential insurance policy against the brutal realities of the road. It meant no single disaster could mean total ruin. The greatest security was not a stronger lock, but a smarter plan, ensuring that even if one thread was cut, the entire tapestry of their enterprise would not unravel. A caravan's precise schedule was a secret locked in the movement of light and shadow. Without a single clock, travelers turned the sun into a giant timepiece, using the landscape itself as their dial. They knew that a specific jagged peak would cast a shadow that, at the exact moment of midday, would touch a distinctive, dark-colored rock at the base of the valley. That silent, daily event was their noon signal, the anchor point from which they measured all other hours. They did not think in terms of 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. Instead, their day was marked by progressions. When the shadow of a certain rock stretched 3 camel lengths, it was time to begin searching for the evening's campsite. When the shadow of a lone tree reached a dry riverbed, it signaled the last chance to collect firewood before dark. This was hyper-local, living time, different for every mountain pass and every stretch of desert, a rhythm dictated by the land beneath their feet. For longer-term planning across seasons, they relied on a celestial calendar etched in the night sky. The position of certain constellations at dusk was their monthly planner. The first appearance of the constellation, many cultures called the Great Bear, lying on its back just above the northern horizon, was a universal signal that the spring thaw had begun in the high mountains. This meant the northern passes would become traversable within 2 weeks. Conversely, when the bright star known as the Scorpion's Heart faded from the evening sky, it was a dire warning that the window for crossing the southern deserts was closing, as the brutal heat of summer was only 30 days away. They carried these star maps in their memories, a rotating schedule of safe travel windows that guided their entire yearly journey. Coordinating the movement of separate caravans, however, required a more active system. This is where the secret messengers came in, men who moved with breathtaking speed between way stations. They did not carry written schedules. Instead, they used a system of knotted cords, similar to the Inca quipu, but tailored for the Silk Road. The color of the main cord indicated the type of message: red for urgent danger, blue for changes in market prices, white for personal news. The number and spacing of the knots indicated the number of days until a planned rendezvous or the size of an approaching caravan. A messenger would arrive at a caravanserai, hand the knotted cord to the master, and then collapse in exhaustion. The master, by reading the knots, knew that a group of 50 camels led by a specific merchant was 3 days behind schedule due to a washed-out bridge, and he could then adjust his own preparations accordingly. This was a silent, efficient network that kept the entire flow of people and goods synchronized across a continent, all without a single spoken word or written document. How did they manage such precision in their personal lives, maintaining the bonds of family and friendship across years of separation? An oasis was never just a stop for water. It was a living library of ecological secrets, a treasure chest of knowledge tended by generations of travelers. Finding one was only the first step. The real challenge was understanding its hidden rules to ensure it would still be there for the next caravan. The deepest secret was that many oases were not natural gifts, but human-made creations, carefully managed ecosystems built around a single, fragile water source. Travelers did not just take from these places, they contributed to their survival, learning a sacred duty to the land that sustained them. The first rule of oasis management was silence about its exact location. You might guide a trusted companion to its edge, but its position was never marked on any map. Its safety depended on its obscurity. To find these hidden gems without a guide, travelers learned to read the botanical clues in the landscape. A lone, healthy palm tree in an otherwise barren area was not a guarantee of water. It was a final confirmation. The true indicators were much more subtle. A certain low-growing, gray-green shrub with tiny, waxy leaves often thrived in areas where the water table was just a few arms' lengths below the surface. Its presence meant that a carefully dug well would likely strike water. Another sign was a specific type of hardy grass that grew in sporadic, circular patches. These rings marked the spot where the roots of long-gone trees had once created underground channels, paths that still funneled precious moisture closer to the surface. Once an oasis was found, its preservation became a communal responsibility. A traveler's first act after drinking was often one of maintenance. If the primary spring was beginning to silt up with sand, they would spend time carefully clearing the channel, ensuring a steady flow. They knew that a blocked spring could become a stagnant pool within a season, then a muddy bog, and finally, just a memory. This was not mere charity, it was an investment in their own future return. The cultivation of certain plants was also a deliberate act of ecological engineering. Date palms were prized not just for their fruit, but for their vast, shallow root systems, which acted like a living net, holding the moist soil together and preventing the oasis from being swallowed by the encroaching dunes. Planting a date palm was like depositing gold in a bank that would mature for future travelers. The most sophisticated knowledge involved the secret secondary water sources. Every oasis keeper knew the location of a backup supply, a tiny seep or a deeper, hidden well that was used only in times of extreme drought or emergency. This information was passed orally from one keeper to the next, a secret held in trust for the entire community of the road. The location of this emergency source was often encoded in a local folktale or a children's song, its true meaning disguised from outsiders. To poison or overuse the main spring was a catastrophe, but to reveal the location of the secret one was the ultimate betrayal. This layered understanding of water, from finding it to farming with it to protecting its secrets, transformed a mere watering hole into a sustained hub of life. It was a covenant between the traveler and the desert, a promise that the well would always be full for those who knew how to care for it. A traveler's walking stick was never just for support. In a swift, unexpected motion, the handle could detach, revealing a slender, razor-sharp blade concealed within the sturdy wooden shaft. This was not a sword, but something far more practical for close-quarters defense on a crowded trail, a weapon that transformed a universal symbol of the pilgrim into a tool of last resort. Its power lay in its secrecy, a hidden edge that gave a solitary merchant a fighting chance against a surprise attack. Out in the open desert, where conventional swordplay was useless in the loose sand, travelers developed a specialized martial art. This was not about graceful, sweeping kicks or complex forms. It was a brutal, efficient system of balance and leverage, designed to work when your feet were sinking and your opponent was just as unsteady. The core principle was to use the environment itself. A fighter might kick sand into an assailant's eyes to disorient them, or use the slope of a dune to add force to a tackle. The most devastating moves targeted the legs and joints, aiming to cripple and disable quickly. because a prolonged struggle in the heat drained strength with terrifying speed. This was survival fighting, stripped of all ceremony, but the best defense was always to avoid a fight altogether. Caravans perfected a natural early warning system that used the desert's own inhabitants. They paid close attention to the routines of the local wildlife, especially the small, skittish ground squirrels and specific species of birds. A sudden, synchronized silence from the birds, or the frantic, scattered chirping of the squirrels, was a clearer signal of approaching danger than any human sentry could give. These animals could sense the vibrations of distant hooves or the unusual scent of strangers long before any human could. Listening to this animal network created an invisible perimeter of security around their camps. For nighttime, they engineered simple yet brilliant alarm systems. A length of twine, nearly invisible in the dark, would be strung taut a few inches off the ground around the perimeter of the camp. Empty clay pots or metal cups filled with a few pebbles were carefully balanced along the string. The slightest touch would send the pots clattering to the ground, the noise shattering the deep silence of the desert night. This humble, makeshift technology was often more reliable than a guard who might fall asleep, turning the ground itself into a watchful ally. These methods of protection, from the hidden blade to the listening earth, show a mindset that prioritized cunning over confrontation. They understood that true safety on the Silk Road was not about being the strongest, but about being the most aware, and the most prepared to turn any ordinary object into a shield. A merchant's bale of silk could hide more than just fine thread. The most successful spies on the Silk Road were not shadowy figures lurking in alleyways, but successful, well-respected traders. Their cover was perfect because their business was real. They bought, they sold, they haggled, and they turned a genuine profit. This commercial success provided the ultimate disguise, granting them access to caravanserais, market gossip, and even the courts of local rulers. While everyone was watching the flow of goods, these merchant spies were monitoring the flow of power, listening for whispers of rebellion, shifts in alliance, or the hidden economic strains that could topple a kingdom. Their first tool was not a dagger, but a ledger, and their most valuable asset was a reputation for being honest in business, even as they practiced the highest forms of deception for their distant masters. Sensitive information could not be carried openly. Spies developed ingenious methods to hide their reports within the very goods they traded. A sealed clay jar of honey was a common sight in any caravan. But a spy's jar had a secret. A smaller, wax-sealed ceramic vial, containing a tiny, tightly rolled parchment, would be suspended in the center of the honey, invisible from the outside and protected from moisture and casual inspection. Only the intended recipient would know to carefully pour out the honey and retrieve the inner container. Another method involved bolts of cotton cloth. A skilled agent could carefully unstitch a seam, insert a sheet of the thinnest paper between the layers of fabric, and then re-stitch it with such precision that no visible trace remained. The bolt would be sold or traded as normal, its hidden message traveling to its destination in plain sight, wrapped around a seemingly ordinary piece of merchandise. Communication required a network of dead drops, locations known only to the initiated. These were not grand landmarks, but utterly mundane spots that would never attract a second glance. A specific, slightly loose brick in the wall of a public bathhouse in Bukhara might conceal a hollow space behind it. A spy could slip a message into this crevice and then mark the bathhouse entrance with a small, innocuous chalk symbol, a signal to their counterpart that a package was waiting. The counterpart, seeing the symbol, would enter the bathhouse separately and retrieve the message, the two agents never needing to meet face to face. Another common drop point was at a crossroads well. A message, sealed inside a waterproof animal bladder, could be weighted with a stone and lowered into the well, tied to a specific crack in the stone lining just below the waterline. To anyone drawing water, it was invisible. To the agent who knew to feel for the string, it was a secret mailbox in the most public of places. The true art of their craft was in the code. Written messages were useless if they could be read by the wrong eyes. Spies did not use complex ciphers that required code books, which were too dangerous to carry. Instead, they used a language of metaphor and trade jargon. A report might read like a standard commercial letter, discussing the quality of a recent shipment. The phrase, "the new wool is exceptionally fine," could mean that a local militia had been well equipped. A complaint that the price of salt has fallen due to an oversupply might secretly report that a rival prince's treasury was running low on silver. The names of trading partners were often code for political figures. To an outsider, it was a boring business update. To the spymaster reading it 1,000 miles away, it was a detailed intelligence briefing on the stability of a remote region. This seamless blending of commerce and clandestine work made the Silk Road the world's most extensive intelligence network, where every trade caravan was a potential courier, and every market price could be a hidden signal of war or peace. A merchant's most dangerous message was the one he never appeared to send. While spies hid reports in honey jars, ordinary travelers developed their own ingenious methods for secret writing, turning everyday items into tools of clandestine communication. The simplest and most accessible of these were invisible inks crafted from the landscape itself. A traveler could squeeze the juice from a common onion or a lemon into a small dish, using a sharpened reed as a pen. Written on the blank margins of a legitimate trade invoice or a personal letter, the message would be completely invisible once it dried. Only when the recipient gently heated the paper over a candle flame would the writing slowly darken and appear, a ghostly text emerging from nothing. Other inks were made from vinegar or even their own urine, substances that left no trace under ordinary light, but revealed their secrets through simple chemical reactions anyone could perform at a campsite. For more complex information, travelers relied on cipher systems woven directly into their business documents. A bill of sale for 500 bolts of silk might seem straightforward, but the real message was hidden in the pattern of numbers themselves. The first digit of each price could correspond to a letter in a prearranged alphabet, spelling out a phrase like "bandits near pass" when read in sequence. Or the totals at the bottom of the ledger might be false, with the real sum calculated by skipping every third entry, a pattern known only to the sender and receiver. These were not complex mathematical ciphers, but practical codes that used the normal clutter of commerce as their camouflage. A customs inspector examining such a document would see only a routine trade record, completely missing the urgent warning layered within the numbers. The most permanent and beautiful form of secret writing, however, was woven directly into fabric. A gifted carpet maker could encode a detailed map into the patterns of a seemingly decorative rug. The number of knots in a specific blue border might represent the number of days to the next oasis. A recurring red geometric shape, subtlety different from the others, could indicate the location of a reliable mountain spring. These were not random designs, they were cartography in thread, a navigational aid that could be rolled up and carried openly, its true purpose hidden in plain sight as a valuable trade good. More delicate messages were embroidered into clothing. The intricate floral patterns on a sleeve might conceal a written plea for help, the curves of the stems and petals forming the letters of a forgotten alphabet. To any observer, it was mere decoration. To a contact who knew the code, it was a clear and desperate message. The very clothes on their backs could whisper secrets their mouths dared not speak, proving that on the Silk Road, the most powerful words were often the ones no one else could see. The vast silence of the desert did more than threaten the body. It preyed upon the mind. To combat the crushing loneliness and ever-present fear, these travelers developed a sophisticated mental toolkit for psychological survival. One of their most powerful weapons was the memory palace, a mental construct built long before they ever left home. A merchant would visualize his own house or a familiar temple in intricate detail. Then, he would place the landmarks of his upcoming journey inside this mental space. The location of a crucial mountain pass might be stored in the imaginary pantry. The turns of a confusing canyon became the pattern of the floor tiles in his hall. By walking through this palace in his mind each night, he could rehearse the entire route, transforming an alien and terrifying landscape into the comforting, predictable rooms of his own home. This was not mere memorization. It was a way to impose order on chaos, to carry a map of the world inside his head where no bandit could steal it. When the weight of the journey became too heavy, they turned inward, using meditation techniques refined on the move. They practiced a form of focused breathing tied not to stillness, but to motion. With each plodding step of their camel, they would inhale for 4 steps and exhale for 4 steps, creating a rhythmic mantra that drowned out the voice of panic. This disciplined breathing served a dual purpose. It conserved moisture in the dry air, and it anchored their thoughts, preventing them from spiraling into despair over a broken wagon wheel or a dwindling water supply. It was a portable sanctuary, a space of calm they could access at any moment, turning the very act of travel into a moving meditation. Perhaps their most crucial mental skill was the slow cultivation of a traveler's intuition, a deep-seated sense for danger and opportunity honed through relentless observation. They learned to read human nature in the subtlest of signs. The way a local guide avoided eye contact when describing the path ahead could be a clearer warning of an ambush than any shouted alarm. They watched animals with the same intense focus. A sudden change in the body language of their own camels, a new tension in the way they held their heads, often signaled the approach of a predator or a stranger long before any human senses could detect the threat. This intuition was not magic, it was a form of hypervigilance, a constant, subconscious processing of thousands of tiny details from the environment. It was the mind's way of compiling a risk assessment from the flick of a wrist, the song of a bird, or the scent on the wind. This hard-won wisdom, carried in the silent spaces of their own thoughts, was what truly separated the survivors from the lost. These countless secrets, from coded maps to hidden blades, were never isolated tricks. They interlocked into a single, sophisticated system for survival, a kind of ancient operating system that powered the first true era of globalization. This hidden body of wisdom was the real infrastructure of the Silk Road, more vital than any single path. It enabled more than just the movement of silk and spices. It allowed for the profound exchange of ideas, religions, and technologies that would quietly shape the world for centuries to come. The mathematics we use, the stories we tell, and the very foods we eat were all carried along these protected channels, shielded by the very secrets we have been exploring. This unspoken network of trust and knowledge did not just connect cities, it connected civilizations, weaving a tapestry of human experience across continents. Without this intricate system of silent communication and mutual survival, the flow of history itself would have been slower, poorer, and far less connected. So the next time you send an encrypted message or rely on a global positioning satellite to guide your way, consider that you are using a modern echo of an ancient practice. The landscape has changed from deserts to digital networks, and our caravans are now streams of data, but the fundamental human challenge remains the same. How do we connect across vast distances, protect what is valuable, and build trust in a world of strangers? The secrets of the Silk Road travelers live on, not in forgotten scrolls, but in the enduring spirit of human ingenuity that finds a way to bridge the impossible.